Hey folks, thanks for joining me again. It's Mike Dirubbo here in New York City, and I'm very excited to have one of the great pianists and Hammond organ players in New York City, actually anywhere in the world. And he also happens to be a great friend of mine, the great Brian Charette. Hey Brian.
Hi everybody, hi Mike.
Hey man, thanks for coming through.
My pleasure.
Yeah man, so starting a little new series here. I wanted to get everyone that was on the latest CD I put out, which was Inner Light.
Uh-huh.
And so Andrew had done one, now you're here, and JK will be here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back a little bit in your history, and how did your whole music thing start?
My mother played the piano very well,
Okay.
and I had a piano in my living room.
Nice.
And I would play it from a very, very early age. I'd just go down there and play it all day long. I actually had a fireside book of American folk songs, and there was a picture inside of, the song was called The Great Wall. It was about the Great Wall of China.
Wow.
And it kind of had like fourths and fifths sounding, emulating pentatonic scales
Okay.
of music from China. On the top, there was a picture of the Great Wall of China, and I would just open the book to this page and play the piano for, I think, great lengths of time.
Wow. Wow.
Strange, right?
And you already knew how to read the music? Your mom
No,
had taught you?
no.
No.
But I did quickly learn how to read music when I was, I don't know if I was 6 or 7,
Okay.
pretty young.
And this was where, for the folks that don't know where you grew up?
I'm from Meriden, Connecticut.
Okay. Yeah. And a lot of people might think, we really grew up together, but we didn't. I grew up in New Haven.
We knew each other from when I was about 15, I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in that environment of Connecticut, if you don't, like Hartford was a whole different world to me, right?
It was.
Yeah.
I played in New Haven a little bit with someone named George Baker,
Okay.
and I would play at a place called Poco Loco. Every Monday night, and then I would drive back to UConn, which is where I was going to school.
Okay, this was when you were already in college.
Yeah.
Were you gigging at all in high school?
All that's from the from 15, I was working all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when was the organ just a part of your thing always?
I didn't play organ at all until I came to New York when I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was trying to survive. I was doing whatever kind of work I could.
Yeah.
And I was taking these gigs on the road, playing blues gigs, like on the Chitlin circuit. And I needed a portable Hammond rig, which was new at the time.
Yeah.
So I got this Hammond XB2, which was very new technology, kind of one of the first modern B3 clones.
Is this already, this would be the 90s
This
already?
is 1994, let's
Okay.
say.
Yeah.
So I'm unpacking it in my place in the East Village on St. Mark's Place. The phone rings. It was Frank Bombera from the St. Mark's Bar, which was right at the end of my street,
Yeah.
and wanted me to play organ on a gig. I had never played organ before, but I was standing in my kitchen unpacking this thing.
Yeah.
So I just took it over there, and I started to play organ at the St. Mark's Bar
Wow.
with Jay Collins,
Yeah.
with Frank Bombera, with a bunch of
What
people
did Frank
there.
play?
Frank was a great drummer, is a great drummer. He's still around, I think. Lower East Side, he plays Latin music as well.
Okay.
Bobby Vidal used to play there on Wednesdays. It was Ralph LaLama would play there with Bob Juice on Sundays. So it was a place where I met a lot of people involved with downtown jazz music, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I started to play a lot in Harlem, which is where I really, at Showman's in Harlem, which is where I really learned how to play organ,
Okay.
like the real instrument with the pedals and stuff.
So can we say then from around that time period, for a good while, you were mostly playing organ gigs in New York? Or
I mostly have played organ in New York the whole time. Really.
Okay.
It's been, I do play piano. I play piano with people like you who knew me playing piano that long ago.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, you know what it was too. I think you might have actually. I don't know if I guess you were on some kind of keyboard when we first played together, which was with George Coleman Jr.
Uh-huh.
That was.
I remember.
The hookup. You remember this?
Right, like the Blue Star.
Is that what it was?
I can see it right now.
Okay.
I was 17 years old, I remember.
All right, so I was about 19. I was probably a freshman in college.
And we went out to eat after the gig to some little cafe. That was owned by a boxer, that place.
Oh, wow.
Manny something. I can't remember his name. Yeah.
Man, it's so vague to me right now.
But he was a really cool guy. That's where I met my girlfriend Heike at that place.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
At this point, were you already going to the Czech Republic?
I think I was. I went to the Czech Republic for the first time in 1992.
Okay.
I think.
You were still in school? You were done with school?
I was in college.
Yeah.
How did it work? I think I started to go to the Czech Republic. I got out of college, in those days you could do advanced placement classes in high school. So I got out of college a little bit early.
Okay.
And so I graduated after 3.5 years. And that spring, I think I started to go to the Czech Republic. Maybe that was 1993, I'm not sure. It was through going to the Czech Republic that I met my roommate Leon, who rented that place on St. Mark's Place, because we both played with Lazzo Decci, who was in New Haven with you.
That's right, but I didn't know him then.
Yeah, so that's kind of the backdoor way how I came to even live in New York, was by going to the Czech Republic.
Okay.
So it was I was in Meriden, I went to college, then I kind of went to Europe, and then from there moved to New York in 1994.
And you're a couple years younger than me, but you moved to New York a little bit earlier than I did.
I moved in 1994, September, I believe.
Okay. I'm going to backtrack a little bit for some of the folks that might want to know, and I want to know too, just your beginnings of trying to understand this music we call jazz. I know that you can explain that you ended up going to UConn, Ellen Rose program at the time. But before that, was there any exposure to it at all for you? Was there did you guys have a jazz band in your high school?
We had a jazz band in my high school.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't super, super active.
Yeah.
But the summer between when I graduated from high school and went to college, I went to a Berkeley summer program.
Okay.
And I became very interested then, and I got books. Remember, Bill Evans' transcriptions.
Yeah.
And that was very good to see exactly what he was doing. They had tape machines there that would play at half speed, which was for the time, a big deal. And I remember that was the first time when I started to practice a lot.
Did you meet Dave Santoro that summer? Or did you
No, I didn't meet him until I was at UConn.
Okay. Any particular people you remember, pianists that you were studying with at that camp?
I think my private lesson teacher's name was Mark Rossi or something like that. I remember, this is many years ago.
Yeah. But
Herman,
you took to it.
I was also working a lot at the time,
Yeah.
and especially in my early days, I was in a lot of cool bands. I was in Street Temperature in Hartford that had a lot of gigs, and
which played at the 880, right?
We played there every Friday.
Yeah.
And it was it was instant. I was instantly involved somehow.
Yeah.
It was never a question for me, or what do I do, or it was just it was like that from the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
You never thought maybe I'll become a chemical engineer or something like this?
I was too busy working to have that thought.
Yeah.
That's
great, man.
And I was always working with really interesting things. I mean, I've had troubling people that I've worked with, but for the most part, it has been terrific,
Yeah. I'm just going to backtrack for those of you that might not know the 880 Club was a kind of a legendary club in Hartford, Connecticut, where a lot of, New York musicians would, on their way through, maybe up to Boston, back to New York, would play, or just come up for the gigs. I remember meeting people like Eddie Henderson there for the first time and getting to play with him. Valerie Ponomarev used to come up a lot. A little bit before my time, before I was hip to the music, people like Junior Cook used to come up there.
Sure.
Frank Strozier. I think George Coleman did as well.
Sure.
So anyways, that's the 880 that we were talking about when you mentioned Street Temperature, playing with them. All right, so you go to this Berkeley camp. You're getting into it, then you decide to go to UConn. Like, how did that come about? Why not Berkeley? Why not the Hart School of Music? Why?
I wasn't even thinking of getting a degree in music.
Okay.
I got accepted at Princeton, I think. I liked going to UConn because the credits transferred. Like, I had a half a year done already with math and science credits. I had some big credits that I already had that I didn't have to take. I also liked that it was close. I liked the campus.
Yeah.
I don't think I was as active in my mind when I was that age either. I don't think I was thinking as much as I do now.
Yeah.
It seemed like the path of least resistance. I didn't really care.
Did your folks, they didn't push you one way or another? Or
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so.
They were cool with it?
They were cool that we went to the different places. Maybe we went to 4 different schools.
Yeah.
And I love the campus there. It was very beautiful. It was like where I grew up. I grew up on a retired dairy farm. So the UConn Stores campus is a dairy farm.
That's right.
So it's very much like the surroundings when I was a young person, which is not like my surroundings now.
No. The farm days are over.
Yeah.
Although, I was walking by 14th Street today, and it smelled a little bit like a barnyard, man. Anyway.
Just wait a couple months.
Yeah. It's warming up in New York City. So, man, you get the jazz bug in a well, you say you were good in you saying that you had all this math and science.
I wasn't good. I wasn't, I got good grades in school. It wasn't that hard. It wasn't that hard.
I mean, I got my first C in algebra trig in junior year, and that kind of made me.
Algebra is really, really unfriendly math. It's not comfortable to do those equations. It's so long, and
yeah.
That's, to me, the most difficult math is algebra. Yeah.
The first one was easy, but it gets hard after that.
Algebra's fucking crazy hard. Yeah. Math is hard.
I was opposite. I didn't take any extra courses that I didn't have to take once I knew I was going to music school. I was like, no physics, no calculus.
Well, I already had, I never took them either because I already had them done. You actually took as much as I did.
But that's what I'm saying. In high school, I didn't take them because you didn't have to take that senior year. That was like an elective.
Really? Oh, man, that's lucky.
Maybe with the way music has turned into, I should have took calculus in high school, I think. Anyway, so you go to UConn. Are you going into New York City at that time?
No.
So you get the call from Lacho. Am I saying his name?
Lazzo.
Right? Lazzo, yeah.
Yeah.
Lazzo, and then you start going to Europe while you're in college.
Yes.
And you start making these connections. You meet Leon.
Yes.
Eventually, he's got this place on St. Mark's.
Yes.
And then you lived there for like 20 years.
24 years.
24 years.
Yeah.
And then you start playing the organ in New York.
Yeah.
That seems crazy to me. I mean, I understand that pianists have to have a left hand together, but it's got to be a little bit of a different vibe, right, man? I mean, it's like you're keeping that groove the whole time. left hand.
Playing the actual instrument, the Hammond B3, is very physical. It's very physically demanding.
Yeah.
You know, it's like an elliptical machine,
Yeah.
kind of almost.
Yeah.
So there's kind of that element to it. It does have keys, and those work the same.
Yeah.
Well-tempered clavier is like that too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like you should be able to have both hands do whatever. So
Okay.
it's not that much harder or different than playing that kind of music to play organ. You have to stay in time.
Mm-hmm.
You have to play the pedals, and you have to be, really it's about being efficient with your body so you don't get all
Okay.
spent, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you have to do it all night long.
I mean, were you walking bass lines already on piano? That's
Yes.
something you used to do?
I was doing it already.
Okay. Because that's a whole different...
I also played the bass when I was a kid.
Okay.
Like the
Yeah.
electric bass.
And you played some guitar too, right?
Yes.
And flute?
That was later.
That was later.
That was much later.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you start getting into Kung Fu?
I got into that when I was 30. I had done Washinryu karate when I was 17 for
Mm-hmm.
a half a year. I got my first belt, but I really loved it. But then I didn't really do anything with that until I was 30.
Okay.
And then I think I was gained a little weight. I was out of shape, and I wanted to get in shape, and I was trying to investigate different things that I could do.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time, I saw a Bruce Lee movie, which I had never
Really?
seen before.
Oh my gosh.
So I started reading about the different styles of Kung Fu, and I was very much into the animal styles and into
Mm-hmm.
Wing Chun, which is Bruce Lee's
Yeah.
original style of Kung Fu. So I had someone living next door to me that was a Kung Fu Sifu, and I started studying it pretty seriously for about 6 years,
Mm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I still do it every day. I just don't study with anybody anymore.
Okay.
I do the forms as exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny because as a teenager, Bruce Lee was like one of my idols. My dad
Amazing.
was into it.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He brought me to some of the guys he worked with, I guess. There was some master that was coming to town, and he brought me along when I was a kid.
A Wing Chun guy?
He wasn't a Wing Chun guy.
Uh-huh.
It might have just been karate, actually. But one of the guys he worked with, son, was going for his yellow belt, and the master was there. My dad's like, yeah, let's go. It was a really seedy part of New Haven that we went. But my mom was always fearful that I would use the Kung Fu or karate on them. So she's like, you're crazy. So I never got to study it. I've always been a little envious that you've been able to do that.
Come to think of it, I did it even before the first Washinryu. I remember now.
Okay.
I went when I was a kid. I went for a while, and I really loved it. I remember. I might have been 10.
Okay.
I don't even remember what that was, though. But I always was fascinated with the patterns of the forms. It's very much like music.
Yeah. Yeah. How's it affected your playing over the years, if it has? I'm sure it has, right?
That was the thing that made me able to play music, was that kind of, I was I had a very difficult process when I would play music before I was 30. Very filled with negative self-talk, whatever, you know. And when I was 30, I got so into studying this other stuff that I kind of loosened the reins a little bit with music, and I could kind of instantly do it. And to me, the stillness of those Eastern studies is totally what informs my music now. It's totally the same thing, Patience and breathing with these kinds of forms,
Yeah.
trying to keep your mind still, this kind of stuff.
Interesting that you you kind of in this place, and when you were a child, opening up this book with the Great Wall on it, right?
That's true too. That's true too.
That's the first thing I thought when you told me that story. I'm like, wow, that's kind of...
That's true too.
Yeah.
And with the Czech Republic, I have such a history. I don't know where that came from either, because I don't have any history or ties to the Czech Republic in my family that I know about.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. You know, you brought up a sorry, my screen went blank here.
That's okay.
We're back. You brought up something, you know, which I like to touch on in certain videos, because it's a struggle for a lot of people to try to make a career and try to play this music. And you know, the old Yogi Berra thing, he says 90% of the game is half mental. But I mean, like, playing music it's so much between your ears, right? Even more so, we all get it together, right? At some point, like,
it's good for me to play a keyboard instrument. It's, if you're a person that plays a keyboard instrument and you're reasonably, you can get along with people and you can do things, you're gonna work in music. You know, there's just so much of a call for a person that can do that. And if you play many genres of music or many different keyboard instruments, it's exponential. You know, especially if you produce and all of these things. So and playing the Hammond organ, I didn't even know about it at the time, but there's just not a lot of people that play the Hammond organ. So if you're one of a very few amount of people that do a thing and people need that, you're gonna zoom to the top of the charts, you know, just by default.
But moving to New York so early, in your early 20s, I mean, you had to felt some intimidation at some point, right?
I never felt that way, and I don't know why.
Okay.
I never felt that way.
Yeah.
I think I moved into my apartment so easily. I was on this tour. Lotso introduced me to Leon Gruenbaum, who was my first roommate. He gave me his phone number. I came down, I took the train. I met with him for an hour. The room was like super cheap. Man, it might have been $400 back then or something, you know. I made the deal with him, and I was moved in, and it was like that, you know. I drove down with my car. I had my car for one day and then sold it. And then I was off to the races. And
how many years later are we now? We're talking 30 years?
I think it's going to be 30 years in September.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
And you've been working a lot in those 30 years.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, besides us playing that gig early on, it was a record that you had given me some tracks, because I wanted to do that tune Excellent Taste on Kronos album we did together, and you had, I believe you had like a piano recording of that. It was like a trio record you did. I don't know if it ever came out or what, but
I don't know either.
But you sent me that, and I'm like, damn, man, I like the way Brian sounds on piano. And so, I don't know, to me you're different, man. You're different than a lot of people. And,
how do you think I feel?
I mean that in a good way.
I know.
I mean that in a good way.
I know.
So, like, what is it like to play piano now after playing organ so much? Does one inform the other at all, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're different instruments. The action is different, is the biggest difference.
Yeah.
The piano is a different action. It's got hammers, you know, but I kind of don't play too fast. So I'm never really struggling with technique. I have my finger is a little bent on my right hand too, so I'm not like 100% technique wise. So I don't really play too fast. And if you don't do that, it's easy to do. And I try to just be calm like I am. In a lot of ways, it's easier because everything is not moving all of the time. So in a lot of respects, it's physically a lot easier to do.
You're not playing the bass line if you have a bassist.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I can play time, but it's not like I'm really responsible for it. You know, I can kind of float on what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
So that part is easier. I love to play piano as well.
Mm-hmm.
But when I sit at an instrument, I just try to do what seems natural, you know. And it doesn't seem too hard to get it to do that if you're not trying to do too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as a pianist, you're in different situations with different people. I know you've played with a lot of vocalists over the years.
Sure.
And different instrumentalists. You know, how does that change for you? Like playing behind a vocalist versus playing behind a saxophone player? Or
for me, it's not a lot different. It's in a different key. Sometimes vocalists sing in different keys. But I try not to play too much behind them, and I try to play the right chords and not too loud. Yeah. For me, it's not different. It's another voice, you know.
But the way you would comp, maybe, or you're just kind of listening, man. Is that
I'm kind of listening. Yeah. I will say, if I'm playing with somebody else who's also playing chords, I won't play as many alterations in my chords.
Yeah.
Because that can be clashing. Sometimes I play very thick chords, though, even with saxophone and singers. If I hear an alteration, I might do something.
Do you feel like
risky?
You're I like it when you get.
I don't know. Sometimes it's too much.
I like sometimes when you lay out. When I come in and you see that I'm going in some different direction.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Which means you're listening, you know.
Yeah.
Do you feel like sometimes you have to dictate from where you are? I don't mean that in a negative way, but just take more of an assertive role to say, like, this is where this is?
I don't really think of it that way, no. I never have that kind of feeling.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
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 But this weekend you're playing at Mesro Trio, so that's a different thing, right? I mean, you're pretty much leading.
That's true.
Everything's starting from you, I guess, in a particular way.
Sure.
Is there, I might know some of the answers to these questions, but I'd like other people to hear. I mean, is there something you're looking for in a bass player when you're playing piano?
No.
What about drums?
No.
Is that, when you're playing organ, then I would think to have a hookup with a particular drums.
I don't care what people do.
No?
I just care that they're nice, really. Sorry, everybody.
But I think, we're spoiled here in New York.
Well, yeah, yeah. But I don't, I never feel, oh my God,
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty uncommon. I never have that feeling.
Yeah.
Everybody's always trying so hard too. If anything, they need to relax maybe a little.
Yeah. Oh man. And you play with a lot of great musicians in the Czech Republic too. I mean, there's great musicians all over the world.
Everywhere,
right?
Of course. Yeah.
And what about being in LA, man? What kind of differences you feel out there versus New York? I mean, other than the environmental and musically.
I play more fusion. There, I would say. Like, it definitely is like an electric late Miles Davis.
Okay.
I mean, I also play in a group there that plays that kind of music.
Yeah.
It may be that, but that's just my personal.
Yeah.
I do play jazz there as well. I play all sorts of different things there.
Yeah. What are you doing to get... Oh, let's backtrack just a little bit, because some people, might be like, well, shit, he does this, and this. Like, was there a process along the way? I mean, you're listening to some of the legends, some of the masters of this music, right? I'm sure.
Of course.
You would have listened to great pianists. You would have listened to great Hammond players.
Of course.
And if you're playing a fusion thing, you're going to listen to guys that are playing the crap out of the keyboard as well, right?
Sure.
So that's part of your study along the way.
I was into that even earlier, maybe, than playing the organ. I was into Jeff Lorber.
Okay.
With Kenny Gorlick, who would become Kenny G.
Okay.
On Wizard Island. And I liked synthesizers all the time, which I do a little bit in that.
Yeah.
So I've always been interested in that music. I used to play with my sextet in LA too. When the Blue Whale was open, we would play there.
Yeah.
So I think that was a place where I developed a lot of that music, the bigger ensemble, because that was a little, like, people could kind of fit in there. That's a very strange town. Like, I had a lot of weird shit happen to me there.
Yeah.
I was punched in the face by a girl on the Sunset Strip.
I love that story.
I was kind of staying with a guy in West Hollywood, and I got thrown out of his place, and I'm walking down, again, the Sunset Strip with my stuff and Trader Joe bags past the bums with their stuff and Trader Joe bags. So it's a rough town. You know, it's like an alien planet.
Wow. Yeah.
But I met some friends there, and I started to play with their group, and it became easier and more stable for me.
Yeah.
But it took a while.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to work more there for 15 years. You know, it takes a long time to it takes a long time sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. I think your screen went off. I think
there it is. I think it's got it. I have it plugged in, so it wouldn't do that. But anyway, at one point, I know you were into these modes of Messiaen, and you showed me some of that stuff when I was working in the sextet, because some of those compositions were involved.
Yeah.
Talk about that just a little bit or something. I mean,
I don't really do it anymore.
Okay.
Olivier Messiaen was a French composer.
Yep.
Who wrote scales that were symmetrical. They had sometimes more or less notes than our normal Western major and minor scales. Yeah. And they were symmetrical, like the whole tone scale is a mode of limited transposition. The diminished scale is a mode of limited transposition. And then he has 7 total modes.
Yeah.
And this music sounds like you're downshifting into a different kind of system.
Yeah.
And when I was writing the music for the first sextet album and the second sextet album, I was into this composer.
Yeah.
And was using his harmony to come up with the compositions, you know.
Yeah.
It is jarring to the ear because it's in a different system. Like, it sounds like something unusual is happening. I've moved a little bit past that, I think. Now I don't do it anymore. I play super inside now. I think, in a lot of.
You might think that, but like,
well, maybe,
yeah,
but I think that I play a lot more minimal and inside than ever.
But that, I feel like that whatever you're doing in that study, it's like it's become a part of your thing.
Maybe. You know what I am interested in even more is these Eastern European Roma scales, Hungarian scales.
The Roma's the gypsy culture?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the one that we did, right? What was it called? The Hungarian...
Major.
Yeah.
So that's a particular scale that I like to play. I play it, on minor. It just has a couple more twisty notes.
Yeah.
So I like the melisma of those kinds of scales. I kind of dip in and out of little things just a little bit now.
Yeah.
Maybe,
So if you are, I know you always tell me you don't practice, and I don't believe you, but you do play 7 nights a week at least. I mean, it seems.
I don't know if it's always 7, but I work a lot.
So you're playing a lot.
I play a lot.
And that's something
I have to practice. I have to practice the music that I have to play.
Yes. Yes.
Whatever I'm playing, I have to practice.
But do you ever feel like, for me, it's like I don't know, like I gotta play that saxophone at least a couple hours a day, and like I'm still trying to, get stuff under my fingers that people like Coltrane and Charlie Parker did, in certain ways, just on that level of expertise. And, do you find yourself like trying to come up with new stuff over the same chord changes that we play?
I would have to say no.
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 Okay.
I write music.
Yeah.
I don't try to. I'm not reaching. I don't want to say I've never had a less artistic aesthetic, but I feel like just like I'm a music machine, and it's a lot cleaner that way. It's a lot easier. It's a lot less grabby. You know, it's a lot less egocentric.
Okay.
I like to write pieces of music that are tuneful to me, and then I play them in a way that is minimal and hopefully beautiful. Yeah. And that's it. Yeah. You know, I'm not really thinking a lot more beyond that or practicing some new. I think that's what this Olivier Messiaen stuff was for me, really reaching for some involved structure, and I have abandoned that a little bit. Yeah.
But when I hear you play and I hear some of the music you write, it sounds fresh and different, man. It's like, where are these things coming from? Are they just coming from the stillness, man? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
I listen for them. I listen for that. And if you can be still, it's there. And then I just write down what it sounds like. More
being a vessel, right? And having this thing come through.
I don't know where it comes from. I hear it, you know. And that's what happens when I play music now too, is I'm not thinking in terms of, oh, I'm gonna do this shape or this pattern now. It's just what I'm hearing. Yeah. And it's easy to tap into that if you can quiet all of the other stuff down. Yeah. And if you don't feel, you know, if your feelings are at ease with music, music is easy. Yeah. You know.
Sometimes, if you have a good read, you know.
You have your instrument is, to me, much more problematic than my instrument. You got the pad stuff that's with the temperature. The reeds, it's a problem.
I mean, we do have to produce the sound to a certain extent.
That's also, to me, harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. They all have their things. I get to bring my instrument all over the world. You've got to play on a new instrument every night sometimes. That'd be kind of strange to me, you know? I get so used to this thing that I'm shedding on every day, and then you put something foreign in my hand. Sure. And you've played on some crappy pianos, even though you say...
I never met a piano I never liked.
Yeah.
I like that.
So, man, I mean, it's just... I always think, you know, and you're a perfect example of it, is like, besides the shedding that we do, you really have to be performing. And then you kind of exponentially grow, I feel like. And you've done so much performing in these past 30 years that it's like, it's like what you do. That's your home, man.
Yeah. I think if it doesn't scare you, if you're comfortable in those environments, it's easier to do whatever it is you do. Yeah. You know, if it doesn't feel so foreign to you, and it's just being familiar with a set of conditions, you know, makes it easier over time. That's all.
It's like being in the studio, you know.
Yeah.
How many records now, and now it's like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Any advice for some people that are just getting started with music or want to play, whatever, if we call this jazz or whatever we want to call it, improvised music, swinging music, groove music?
I think it's important. The most important thing is to have integrity. Mm-hmm. If you can do anything, play an instrument, if you can provide a service for people, and you can work with them and communicate, and you have integrity, you just can't miss. You know, you don't even have to really worry about too much anything else, really, because you become useful. You know, I would play a rhythm section instrument as well if you're a saxophonist or a trumpet player. I would get some skills producing music or playing keyboards. I would have a few things going on.
Yeah. You know. That's great advice, man. Well, Brian, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
And I'm going to see if I can move this rig over to the piano, maybe have you play something real quick.
Okay.